Hello YouTube, welcome back to another video. I'm your friendly neighborhood Dungeon Mattster, and we finally did it. We finished the Santa's workshop. Stick around and I'll show you how I put all of this together. So I spent the better part of almost 3 weeks leading up to Christmas and New Year's. And 2 weeks after working on this workshop and putting all of this scenery together. These trees I did not make. They came from Michael's just after the holiday. They were on sale for about $10, which so I snatched them up because I figured I'm playing Frostgrave a lot and having some snowy trees would be useful. However, I did not originally intend to use them in the build, so this is kind of a new addition. Now, this is one of the more detailed builds that I did, and to do it all for one video, it took quite some time. So I want to show you almost everything that I did. There's some mistakes contained in here. I didn't want to edit them out. I felt like I should leave them in so you guys can see kind of what I did wrong, particularly with these candy canes were probably the hardest part of the entire build. So, and I'm exceptionally proud of how they came out. So I look very much forward to showing you guys how I did all of this and put all of this together, all the little details and everything. So stick around and watch the video. It's another bit of a long one, not as long as the last one, but this wraps up this whole scene here. Also, there's an announcement coming up after the video, so stick around. All right, what I have here is a very large sheet of foam board, and I want to cut off a 9 1/4 inch section from the side of it. Now, what I've got here, I know not everybody has one of these tools, but I've got a very large carpenter's square. It is 16 by 24, so it just happens to be the exact size of one of these 2 foot by 2 foot project panels. So first what I'm going to do is measure 9 1/4 inches from this end, and I'm just going to make a tick mark with my knife. I have a nice fresh blade in my large craft knife. I took measurements beforehand of the size of the piece that I needed. Okay, now I'll just take the longest edge of my square, line it up with both of the tick marks. This is going to be the foundation for the building. I'm not overly concerned about how square this cut is, so I'm just going to give myself a good 1.5 inch worth of blade here, and I'm just going to cut slowly and try to keep the blade as straight as I can. There we go. And now I need a 10 inch section. I believe that mark is at 10 inches. I can switch to my smaller square now. I don't need something quite so large for this part. It's actually, that mark is actually at 9 3/4, so that's what I'm going to go with. Just keep it square. There we are. And now I'm going to use my Proxxon to trim out the rest of it. So I just placed my house on top of my foundation here and traced out the parts that I need to cut. Being careful not to make too many marks on the foam, because I want to make sure that I have enough clean foam to do texture on after. And I'm just tracing the pattern out with a pencil with the parts that I'm going to cut out. I'm going to come up here to my Proxxon and get the cut lined up. Now I'm going to rotate it. Cut out the other bit, even though that didn't come out quite that evenly. I'm going to repeat the same thing for the other end now. this should pretty much fit my building perfectly, or at least come very close to it. Works well enough for me. Let's move on to the next step. So I've cut out a basic shape for my base for my house, roughly in the same shape. It's not exact, as the house wasn't perfectly square, so it was a little tricky to get this to come out right and cut it out evenly. So I'm going to divide it into two sections. The workshop's going to be kind of a stone texture floor, and it's going to be just wide open with no grid. And this is going to be a wood pattern with no grid. And I'm just going to kind of speed through this, put the cobblestone texture on the side, do the same thing that I did for my last video where I made the small house. So go ahead, click the link above to check out that video to see this technique done in a little bit more detail. It's a widely used technique, so it's not that hard to find a video of it. But I'll show you guys how I do it here, but just quickly. So just bear with me while we get it knocked out real quick. Ever since I saw the shiftinglands.com video on Black Magic Crafts channel, where Gerard Boone came to visit him, I've been using pencils to draw my textures and patterns on foam, and this is definitely now my preferred method of doing it. It just leaves a much better mark than using a pen or anything else. Okay, now I'm going to use a combination of tinfoil and rock to give my cement floor and my cobblestone on the side some texture. And I'm going to come back in and texture the wood as well. There's only one thing left to do with this, and that's cover this part in black Mod Podge before we move on to painting. Next, we're going to make ourselves a couple of staircases, and I've decided to do that using balsa wood. In the previous video, I made them out of XPS foam, but this time I wanted to try something a little different and make actual staircases. So I've got some measurements taken. I want the stairs to be 1 inch high, not including the railing, because I'm going to add railing to them, and I want to have them be the width of a miniature base so that I can have miniatures actually stand on the steps. And I figure 2 steps should cover the distance needed to get from the ground to the top level. And yeah, so I'm going to make the runners out of this wide piece of balsa wood. I'm going to make the posts out of this very skinny small piece of balsa wood, and I'll make the steps and the railing out of this strip piece of balsa wood. All of which I purchased from my local craft store. So let's figure out, let's get a straight edge here to work with. So we have a straight edge now. And I figure an inch out would be enough to cover the distance that I need. So I'm going to mark that. And I'm actually going to do it 4 because I'm going to need 4 of them, 2 for each set of stairs, and I have 2 staircases I need to make. Okay, I've got my 4 sets here, and I'm going to turn the grain sideways. Okay, and looking at the width of my thin strip, it's not quite, it's a little bit bigger than 1/4 inch, which is okay. So I'm actually going to make my runner 1/4 inch instead of 1/2 inch. So I'm going to cut another 1-inch section off of this, make 1/4 inch measurements instead. And I'll just do those using my cutting mat here, which is actually easier. Okay, and now I'll just cut it out like I did before. I'm trying not to do that, trying not to split them. And I'll just repeat those cuts on another piece. But first I had a little break here that I'm going to fix with some super glue. Okay, now that I've got the runners cut out, I need to cut out my lengths of strip. And I think I want the gap in between them to be big enough to fit the lip of a miniature base. So I think I want to go 1 1/4 inches. So if I go 1 1/8 inches of width will be okay, but I want some overhang as well. So I want to go with 1 1/4 inches. This looks like a job for the balsa chopper. And I have already measured out 1 1/4 inches and put a stopper there to make it much faster to cut out these pieces left over from last time. So I didn't even have to measure out that 1 1/4 inches. I could have just done this. So I'm just going to use this to cut my pieces real quick. It also occurs to me that I want some pieces to brace the inside of the stair runners. And I'm going to kind of just guess at 1 1/8 inches here and cut out 2 pieces like that to brace the inside. Now I'm just going to attach these using some hot glue. Okay, let's make some more accessories. Here I have some green, shiny, I don't even know what you'd call them, pipe cleaners that I got from Michael's. Pretty cheap, fairly inexpensive for the whole pack, and there's no way I'm ever going to use all of them. And I wrapped them up in some circular shapes and cut out some ribbons out of some scrap pieces of red EVA foam that I had laying around. I could have done this using any number of materials. I could have used t-shirt material, painted it red. I could have used red construction paper, whatever you feel like using for this. And you'll notice a couple of them have small details carved into them, like folds. Just draw those in with a pencil, any kind of other details you have, and leave the black lines, and it ends up looking like a shadow in the foam. These little ribbons came out pretty damn cool, if you ask me. Just attach these to the front of your house using some hot glue. Next, I'm going to show you how I made the windows. These were technically attached to the house before I did the wreaths, but I figured this was a good spot to put them in the video. So if you don't see the wreaths attached to the house, that's why. We have just some pieces of mesh that I got from the craft store. These just happen to be black. You can use white, but you have to spray paint them a darker color in order to use them. Instead of painting the inside of my house, I decided to black out the windows using some construction paper. And this is kind of also an optional step. You don't have to do this part. It's actually more work, I think, than painting the inside of the house. But at least this way, it could hide some of the defects of the inside of the house if I chose to have it be that way. And gluing them to the piece of paper like this and then cutting them out was a lot easier than trying to cut out individual pieces of paper and gluing them to the backs of them after affixed to the inside of the house. Alright, so one of the things that I did is I decided I want to make a bunch of little presents. So I went over to my Proxxon and I cut a bunch of different size cubes and rectangles to try to make presents out of. I think we're going to find out real quick whether or not this is going to work well or not. So I'm just going to take out any of these that don't fit the bill, stuff that doesn't look all that great. And I'm not going to use all of these because there's a lot of work to be done here. There is an easy way to do this, and then there's a hard way to do this. I'm going to do this the hard way because I'm a moron, and I'm going to do it that way. I'm obsessed with using my green stuff, so I'm going to use some more green stuff. This stuff has an extremely long working time, so I'm not going to worry too much about it being, trying to get done with it too quickly. I take my time with these. Obviously now what I'm trying to do here requires me to have, since I'm making ribbon and detail and stuff like that, it needs to be flat. So I'm rolling it out and I'm just putting some water down on my cutting mat here. And I'm just rolling it out. And that worked out pretty well. So I just need something to work on here. I just keep picking it up to make sure I'm not making it stick. Because if this sticks to the table, I'm going to have a hell of a time getting it off. So I'm going to use this thing to make some straight lines. Put that stuff off to the side. I might need that for the smaller bits. And now I'm just going to cut some ribbons, some wider ones for the bigger pieces. Set those aside. We're going to try to use them now. And Houston, I think we have a winner. I'm just going to do a whole lot of rinsing and repeating. I can't believe how resilient this stuff is. I'm incredibly impressed with it. It's so much better than working with like Sculpey or something. I just wish it wasn't so expensive for such a little amount. So I'm just wrapping, you can see I'm just wrapping a piece around, tacking it to itself, and then I just kind of put a score in it and pull it apart. This is actually going a lot quicker than I thought, so I am going to do all of these presents. Plus it's sticking really well to the foam. Okay, I gotta take my scraps here and roll out another flat piece and start over. Okay, now I want to make some bows for the tops of my gifts here, and I'm not sure exactly how to do it, so I'm just going to experiment a little bit and see what I can come up with. I figure the best thing that I can do is do a cross piece like this and then just curl it up after I stick it to the top of one. So let's try sticking this to the top of this bad boy here, crosswise. I'll just curl them up. See how that looks. And just because I think that looks cool, I'm going to leave that one dangling just like that. So I'm sorry, but I ended up doing this part off camera. I ended up spray priming these with some of my Vallejo surface primer, and this stuff worked great. I used it in my airbrush with very minimal pressure. I actually adjusted the dial on my airbrush down so it didn't spray all that heavy, and I sprayed it in light, even sweeping coats. And it ended up not melting the foam, which is great. And now it's got kind of a layer of protective enamel on it, or in this case, protective polyurethane, which is a pretty strong in itself. And I did a zenithal highlight using some white ink over the top, just to give them a little bit of depth. And now I'm going to just kind of come in and haphazardly paint them. I'm going to paint them some pretty simple colors. White paper, red paper, green paper, Christmas colors, and try to contrast the ribbons with the color that I use for the box portion. So it's going to be a little bit tedious because there's a lot of pieces here, but we'll make as short work of them as we can and speed it up in the camera so you guys can see it happen a little bit quicker. I've just got my craft knife here, and I've cut up a small piece of wooden dowel, which I've kind of, I don't know what the word is. I've carved it up a little bit to make it a little bit more distressed, to make it look more like a natural wood pole. Just taking chunks out of it, slice off little pieces, little slivers, to make it look a little bit more like a hewn wood pole. Okay, so I've got just a couple of small pieces of balsa wood here that I've cut with the grain running the long way. And I'm just going to cut a couple of diagonals on the end, and these are going to be my signs. And I want all of these to be different sizes so that there's a variation. We'll have one pointing one way, two pointing another way. Yeah, that'll work. I do think I need to make my pole a little longer though. There we go. Now we've got a nice rough hewn log and some nifty looking signage here. So I'm going to take some super glue and glue these bad boys together. So I wanted to mix up some green stuff to make a base for this thing. I shouldn't need much. I'm just going to take a 1-inch square for that, and then there's just something I wanted to put a little ball on the top as well, but I'm going to just take a small bit out of this here to do that with. So I've just got this stuff here. Just get a little bit of water on my fingers and mix it up. Putting a little bit of water on my fingers helps prevent the green stuff from sticking to me while I'm mixing it, because it's incredibly sticky. So I just get a little bit of water on my fingers and it makes it easier to work with. I'm going to take off a small bit here to save for my little ball that I want to put on top. Again with the water on the fingers. And we're just going to mold this around our stick here. I'm going to shove that down in. And just mold that around until we get something that stands up reasonably well. And I want the sign to lean slightly. I don't want it to be perfect, so. Okay, now I've got my little ball of stuff here, which I'm gonna roll up nice and fine. Try to get it as, smooth and orb-like as I can. Got a nice little smooth ball there. Stick that to the top. Oh. Once the water evaporates, it'll get sticky again. So I'm just going to kind of wait for that to happen and just use that stickiness instead. Okay, and I've got a tiny little piece over here that I wanted to roll out. And then try to stick it around the bottom of this here. I know this is going to be difficult, so bear with me. I'm going to do this kind of thing here. Have it wrap up and around. There we go. In this shot here, you can see I'm using some snow paste on the base of my signage. And this is just a homemade paste that I made using some flock from Woodland Scenics, the snowflake flock, and some white PVA glue to stick it all together. And it makes a nice snow paste to put on your bases. And I didn't shoot it here, but you can see that I'm sticking some small silver and gold jewelry beads to this small tree. And what I did was I hit the tree with some spray adhesive before putting the beads on there. And it did hold somewhat, but a few of them fell off, and I said screw it and went in and super glued them eventually so that they wouldn't fall off. And then I put a hollow bead on the top for a tree topper, since I didn't have any small stars and I couldn't find any at the craft store. And this video marks some of my first experimentation using water slide decals. In the past, I've used paper and Mod Podge and just glued decals right to whatever I was doing, and in some applications that works well, but here I wanted to preserve color and not necessarily have to do miniature calligraphy because I'm no good at it and my fingers aren't steady enough. So I purchased some water slide decal paper for my inkjet printer from Amazon, and this is just the Testers brand. And this particular pack had clear and white water slide decals, so you can see a mixture of both in this video. Here I'm using the clear ones. And I just made some small logos. I downloaded a font off the internet, made some small text, and decided to glue them to the front of the signage, and it worked out pretty good. And, you know, one to go overboard quite frequently, I decided to make a swinging wall sign to put on the front of the building, such that, you know, you could see that this was obviously Santa's workshop. Now you can make this interchangeable as you want. You do not have to do this ridiculous detail, but I loved this little sign, and I definitely plan on doing this again in the future, but I think I want to try to make it a little bit more modular so I can swap the logos on it and try to make it that way so I can change the type of building that it's used for. And to accomplish this, I used some balsa wood beams and some panels and my pin vise to drill very small holes. And I took my time, I went slow, and I made sure to pinch the pieces in between my fingers so that they wouldn't split, and that ended up working out really well. If you go slowly and you use an appropriately small bit, there's not much likelihood that you're going to split this wood. It's really, really soft. Just take your time and go slow and you'll be alright. Now, a very, very long time ago, I purchased these jewelry hooks for use on other projects. I was originally going to use them to make doors and such, but here, this was the perfect project to use them on, to make the swinging sign beneath the brace. And I just fed them through and trimmed them off, and then added a touch of super glue to keep them from falling out. I'm just joining the pieces together using 2 pairs of pliers to get the split rings together. can see what I was referring to about the water slide decals with the background. These particular water slide decals have the white paper background, such that when I put them on the wood, they won't show the wood texture through where the white portions of the text would be and the white portions of the background would be. Now, to apply these stickers, it's fairly simple. You just have to soak them in water until they curl up, and then keep soaking them for another minute or so, and then they slide right off of the paper, hence the term water slide, and activate the adhesive and stick right to whatever you're fixing them to. Now, these wood pieces were finished first using some spray lacquer, some dull coat. So I saved the most difficult portion of the build for last, and I say most difficult because it was a difficulty of decision. These are making some candy canes here out of some green stuff, and I could have used other types of clay to do this, so I just chose to use green stuff because I was absolutely obsessed with using it during this build for some reason. And I rolled out some pieces. I made them roughly 2 inches long and then bent them about a 1/2 inch in, so they're about 1.5 inches tall each. And then I connected them to some washers for bases. I could have used anything for this. I could have used pieces of cork, or I could have made bases out of green stuff, but I chose to save a little time and a little money and have these be a little bit heavy to boot so that they wouldn't tip over. I just repurposed them from some tokens that I made a long time ago. And to accomplish this, I decided to use the baking soda super glue technique to get them to stick in. Even having done that, I still ended up having to reinforce them a little with hot glue to keep them from falling over. I tried different kinds of glue to get these to stand up, and they just wouldn't stand up straight. The super glue and baking soda technique was the only thing that I found that got them to stick straight up almost instantly. I had originally planned on ribboning these with red, so I painted them white to begin with. Now the white paint ended up not sticking all that well, and when I pulled the masking tape off here to try to do the red striping, it ended up ripping some of the paint off. So I had to go back to the drawing board and figure out what it was that I was going to do. So I tried some using some silicone gel, some masking that I've seen other people do with miniatures and such, and it was a dismal failure. I realized I couldn't keep the lines straight because I had no masking on there. So I decided I was going to use a different technique, so I spray painted them red. So I changed the base coat again to red, and this would be the color that I ended up keeping in the end, in the long run, because I figured I could just use something white on the top and not really have to worry about keeping the line straight. To do this, I decided to try Milliput, and I ended up liking it initially, but the Milliput was too brittle to work with as fine as I had wanted to. And in retrospect, I'm thinking, when I had made the candy canes, when I had rolled out the initial roll with the green stuff, I could have wrapped a ribbon of green stuff around them and just painted each of them. And it only occurred to me in post-production of the video that that was something that I could have done. You can see here when I try to apply the Milliput to the piece, it ends up snapping and breaking, and that was just too frustrating, so I gave up on that. And then I tried to dye the Milliput red in a final ditch effort to try to, I was going to spray paint the things white again, and I just got frustrated. And lastly, I settled on just using white construction paper and super glue, and it ended up being the perfect solution to the problem. So I just cut some really thin strips of white construction paper, super glued them to the candy canes, and then wrapped them around and affixed them in numerous spots using the super glue. And it ended up working out good. I figured I had better seal these up a little bit to keep the paper from moving around, especially because I didn't glue the paper down the whole way down the length of the candy cane. And I wanted to matte out that red a little bit since it was a little bit too shiny for my taste. So I ended up just coating these in some matte Mod Podge, and it worked out really well. The last two things to do on these is I coated the base with brown paint, the same color paint that I used for the wood for the rest of the build. I didn't belabor this too much. I just figured I'm gonna cover these in snow flock anyway, or snow paste anyway, so I just decided to paint the base brown just in case any of the snow paste ended up not covering the spot, and then it wouldn't be red or black or anything like that. It would look legitimate. So you can see my little tub of snow paste that I made. These little containers are great. They're definitely useful. I found them at Michael's for about $3. Consider getting yourself some for mixing your own terrain pastes and such, like I did here. So I've been contemplating for quite some time, possibly taking a break from making videos and all this other stuff, and I've also come to a decision regarding this. As of February 1st, I'll be suspending billing on my Patreon page, and quite potentially as of March 1st, depending on how February goes, I may even shut down my Patreon to focus more on making videos, to making them for myself again, going back to the origins of the channel, just having a hobby and having the craft be the central focus of the channel instead of trying to turn this all into a living, just trying to do a good job at doing what I do. It occurred to me that since it took me so long to do this, I put a lot of time into this. Having the time to be able to do this and not feel obligated to come out with a video every week or every other week and just kind of have the video done when the video is done is more of the direction that I want to go in. So towards the end of February to the beginning of March, I'm going to come up with an alternate plan for how the channel is going to be going forward in 2020 and beyond. So for February 1st, all of my patrons, you will not be billed for February 1st. Few of you, handful of you, you'll not be billed for February 1st. And as of March 1st, I'll determine, or towards the end of February rather, like I said, I'll determine where the channel is going to go from there. I had a lot of fun doing this. I hardly stressed at all doing any of this stuff, as I didn't feel obligated to have a time frame to do it in. But I can't justify charging people monthly when I may not even come out with a video every month anymore. And what I want to do is focus on quality rather than quantity. I want my videos to get back to where they were instead of being repetitious, boring, kind of mundane things. So that's my announcement, and I just wanted to thank everybody for the support that they've given me over the last year of the channel on Patreon. We're coming up on 500 subscribers. If I haven't already hit 500 subscribers by the time this video comes out, that's a milestone for the channel that I didn't think I'd hit anytime soon. Very grateful for that. A lot of people have been giving me some positive feedback, which has been great. It's helped me improve not only my craft, but my video making as well. I kind of regret that I feel like I need to do this with the channel and everything, but I think it's, kind of for my own sanity going forward that I need to kind of step back a little bit and take that time to assess what needs to be done with things. The most important thing to me is giving you guys something quality to look forward to, and having something every week, and then, you know, if 3 out of 4 videos are not up to par, then that's really not worth anybody's time. So thank everybody. I want to thank everybody for sticking around. I haven't lost a single subscriber on YouTube, which has been amazing. Nobody has, my numbers have not gone down, they've only gone up. So nobody seems to be, you know, upset with anything I'm doing. Not that they would be. It's kind of a corny hobby to be angry at anybody at, honestly. There's a lot of drama going on in the crafting sphere and everything, especially with the COPPA thing on YouTube and stuff. And I just, honestly, I want no part of that. I don't want to be any part of any drama. I just want to present my hobby. And, you know, if it comes to the time when I hit 1,000 subscribers and maybe I monetize or something like that, that's, you know, something down the road that I have to worry about. I want to show you guys what I do. I'm sharing this with you. So, you know, I'm not going to give you the usual spiel. I'm not going to tell you to go over to my Patreon or anything like that right now. But if you do feel like supporting me, if you do want to show some love, I do have a PayPal me link down below in the description, so you can make a one-time donation to the channel in any amount you choose. Any little bit helps, any little bit goes a long way, and it can help to fund builds like this that were largely built and purchased using funds from the support of my viewers like yourselves. So I have been your friendly neighborhood Dungeon Mattster. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment below, let me know what you think. I'll see you guys next time. No videos coming in February, but there may be one more by the end of January, so stick around. And yeah, here's to the future. Take care, everybody. Peace.